You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, and Ashley Hardgrave. All right, this week it's the OBS Year in Review, from Beyoncé showing off her Italian Baroque chops, to Arts Council England continuing to be the enemy of opera, to friend of the show Anthony Roth Costanzo's $15 ticket scheme, to friend of the show Benjamin Bernheim getting the ultimate OBS bump. 2024 certainly was something. The team breaks it down for you. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow on Apple Podcasts. Hit the plus sign. Email us your hot takes and, New Year's resolutions by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com or upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger just for sharing your own hot take. And once again, folks, we are recording everything separately because, hey, it's the holidays, and we don't take a week off except when we do, and sometimes we do this sort of halfway week off thing, but, we're only human, but we still want to present you with the best of what is happening in opera land every single week, so we thought we would get together, metaphorically, and do this special for you. Now, we have a list of questions here, penned by our very favorite creative consultant, Oliver Camacho, who has given us some prompts to sort of reflect on the year. So without further ado, let's talk some opera.
Chalk Talk on Opera Box Score.
As your Christmas and Hanukkah marshmallows begin to take on that chalky texture in these latter days of the festive season, I thought I would invite my colleagues to join me in a year in review. And we'll do this round robin, beginning with our favorite Chalk Talk stories, or perhaps 2-minute drill stories of 2024. I'll begin. I have to say it was Anthony Roth Costanzo's year, first being tapped as the general director for Opera Philadelphia, and then being a part of that ingenious $11 or pay what you can ticket scheme, which was perhaps the biggest news story in North American opera. And it remains to be seen whether they'll be able to repeat that. But they certainly got a lot of people to see The Listeners, and probably, was it Madame Butterfly that was also part of that season? Brilliant idea. And I know it'd be very hard for other opera companies to repeat that or imitate that, but definitely made a lot of waves. And remember that he also was still giving performances as a countertenor, notably in the world premiere of Gregory Spears and Tracy K. Smith's The Righteous at Santa Fe Opera, and his one-man Marriage of Figaro. I think one of my colleagues will actually be talking about Anthony Roth Costanzo as a performer. But as far as good news goes, I think Anthony Roth Costanzo wins 2024. Let's hand it over to Ashley.
Favorite drill story or chalk talk of the year? Easy. February's O is for Opera segment about the Muppets, episode 405. I got to share my love of opera and how it intersects with my love of Muppets. Everybody learned something. Everybody felt better. No further questions. Go back in our archives, episode 405. You won't be sorry.
I certainly did not expect to have on the agenda for 2024 another story about everyone's favorite Romanian diva, Angela Gheorghiu, who found herself for the second time in 8 years, at least the second time in 8 years, in hot water over an incident in Korea where she yelled out at her colleague during his encore of E Lucevano le Stelle, saying, "Excuse me, it's a performance, it's not a recital, respect me." And her justification for doing so was that an encore would interrupt the dramatic flow of the opera, much less, of course, than her outburst would. And the paragraph upon paragraph motivated reasoning statement that she gave defending herself and saying she had been offered the chance for an encore and turned it down, and none of the other great conductors she ever worked with ever would have allowed an encore during performance, and that she really just cares about the art and the production team and the conductor, and that everyone had told her that there would be no encores, and that there is just going to be an issue if there are surprise encores, and really it's everyone else who's being unprofessional. Just truly a classic of the genre. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Angelo Gheorghiu is no stranger to causing a commotion off of the operatic stage. And I personally am just so glad that in 2024 we got one more example of this kind of diva behavior that you really just don't see very much anymore. But it brings a tear to my eye, and my heart skips a beat when there is just something that is this low stress and also not about England going bankrupt.
My very favorite Chalk Talk of the year was pretty bittersweet, actually. It's from episode 434, which was the last episode we all recorded with George Cedarquist before he went to that great press box in the sky. It was, I think, a pretty nice, lovely tribute and a retrospective on the show that he started so many years ago, on how we've changed and evolved since then, and how we look to the future of the podcast as our fearless leader was shifting to an executive producer role. I think the Chalk Talk is well worth a re-listen for fans of George Cedarquist, but if you are a fan of all the Handel operas, maybe you can give it a pass.
Thank you very much, Weston. So for our second topic, let's talk about our least favorite Chalk Talk or 2-minute drill story of the year. And for me, it's a toss-up between all of the bad news coming out of England with the defunding by the Arts Council England, and how that has affected so many organizations downstream, and the existence of English National Opera, where they're going to be located, and the chorus strikes and all of these things. Just terrible news for, a country that ostensibly really prizes the arts, probably more than the US does. I don't know. It's just sad to see that happening. And, those, what used to be reliable organizations and jobs, now those people are scrambling, and that is really upsetting. But what is also equally upsetting is the continuation of artists behaving badly, and those artists staying in the news for better or for worse. We keep talking about the same people. And I'll even extend it as far as John Eliot Gardner, who is a very important artist in the early music movement and deserves a lot of credit for the work he's done. But clearly he has anger issues and behaved badly, and he's already back in the spotlight. What is it with presenters that they are so ready to forgive artists who have clearly behaved badly? That is annoying. And I assume it's going to continue to be a topic in 2025. So we'll talk about these people in the future, hopefully not saying their names as much because they don't deserve the oxygen. Let's get past this one to Matt.
I'd have to say that the worst drill story of the year for me is Sarah Connolly getting into hot water for defending the Saudi royal family and regime as a part of the Zarqa Alma Mama opera house opening, when she was asked in an interview how she felt about working for the family that had murdered the Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. She kind of hedged her bets and tried to make everyone happy by saying, yes, it's the same people, but they're trying very, very hard to make sure that nothing like that ever happens again, which is of questionable reality and really did not go over particularly well. In a shocking twist, she ended up deleting all her social media accounts shortly thereafter. But this just goes to show for me, I think, where we are. This was unfortunately a little bit more of a canary in the coal mine about what was going to be happening this year in social political terms than I even expected. With the rehabilitation of people who really should be nowhere near power, and the acquiescence of those who know better to the what they are offering, which is comfort and luxury and prestige and proximity to that power. I didn't really see it at the time, but looking back through some of the stories that we talked about, it really stands out to me as like, the hindsight is, unfortunately 2024.
Worst drill story or chalk talk of the year. I'm going to go with the Vulture article that we covered in April in episode 413. This is that article about Kara Kaiser and the incidents that happened over a decade ago with the New York Phil. It is the worst because it took us a decade to uncover this as a culture, as a populace, but I am really grateful for that article, for the conversation that was spawned from that, and for folks like Catherine Needleman exposing what she calls BFMs, or big fancy men. She was almost my artist of the year, Catherine Needleman, but I feel like we're going to be hearing a lot from her in 25, so I'm going to save her for then. But yeah, worst one of the year is remembering that stuff like that still happens, and it takes us a very long time to uncover it.
I think the worst story was sort of a multi-part saga of Peter Gelb truly throwing stones in glass houses as the numbers from the great experiment of the Met switching from standard rep to newer works kind of failed on first blush to provide immediate results in the form of large audiences and acclaim and all that. And on top of all that, throwing Le Grand Macabre under the bus in the New York Times really really aimed at me specifically. But overall, I think Peter Gelb's sort of tendency to blame audiences and blame change and, really crow to the heavens about why his kind of change is superior to other kinds of change, other ways of doing things, is really emblematic of the problem that so many large arts organizations have, which is the difficulty in adapting to contemporary audiences and making decisions based on what seem to be vibes rather than historical data and focus group research. I think the tentative and hesitant progress at the Met is a perennial topic here at the OBS, and it seems, unfortunately, it will continue under Gelb's leadership, and that's certainly, if I may coin a phrase, a bad call for the year.
Well, now for some better news. What was the favorite performance you attended? Hopefully it was an opera. And what made it good? I'd like to start, and I think many of you know this if you follow me on social media, that I thought that Santa Fe Opera's Der Rosenkavalier was one of the best productions I've seen in a long time. I'm already forgetting the names of everybody involved, but the Marschallin was sung by friend of the show, Rachel Willis Sorensen. Not Susanna Sophie, by friend of the show, Ying Fang. Faninal was friend of the show, Zachary Nelson. The production was just so joyful and so confident. That's the thing that I really come away with, was how assured the production was, that there was never a moment where you feel like, oh, that didn't work, or, oh, that lighting choice makes me question so-and-so, or that costuming choice. No, everything was just meticulous, and it was a joy to watch from start to finish, and it really allowed me to focus on the story and to enjoy the performances. Everybody had the music well in hand, especially Ying Fang as Sophie, who is maybe one of my favorite artists now, singing. Her production is so elegant and so clean, and yet she's expressive and she has great stage presence. She's so delicate and girlish, but also clearly very, very intelligent and knows how to use her body. Rachel Willis Sorensen, also much more a regal performer, but man, tone for days. And she was also singing Donna Anna. I forget the name of the artist who canceled the Donna Anna in the Don Giovanni that was running simultaneously with the Rosenkavalier, but she was doing double duty. And boy, was I glad to hear her in both of those operas. Paula Murray was Octavian. Seems like a role that she really associates with and really knows how to perform this and make this a believable character. David Portillo was the Italian singer, and his moment, he really shone. There was a very beautiful lighting effect that they used to put focus on him while he was singing, and it was very touching. All in all, just a great production. Oh, was it Matthew? God, why am I forgetting his name? The guy who sang Baron Ox. I'm so sorry. I'm not getting his name right now, but also outstanding. It's a long song, but I was never bored. And yeah, it was thrilling. Look up the cast, look up the rest of the creative team. I'm sorry I don't remember all of that, but I just remember it being my favorite show in 2024. On to Ashley.
I didn't see a ton of opera this year, but I have to say my absolute favorite, top of the list, was Fidelio at Washington National Opera. It was a oddly modern storyline that was, well, frankly needed during that hopeful time in the nation's capital, November 2024. You remember that, right? Also, welcome back, Denise Graves. You have been missed. It's also going to be a reminder for me of the resilience and standing up to tyranny that is going to be needed in 2025 for no particular reason at all. The clip that I would like to share is the one of our girl and friend of the show, Sinead, at WNO singing the Abscheuliche. Not the hateful monster part, but the faithfulness and love will prevail part. A message we are all going to need for 2025.
Ich folge dem ihnen Triebe, ich weine mit Menschen, der Träume.
One of the things I'm most disappointed about 24 for myself is that I really didn't get a chance to make it to very much live opera, just due to some bad luck with my scheduling. And when the companies around me in Chicago were performing, they just really didn't line up very well with my other projects. That's something that I'm going to take a lot of effort to change in 2025 because I absolutely miss going. I can feel that it's been too long since I was in an opera house and I need to get back. That's not to say, though, that I didn't get the chance to enjoy some really incredible music. It's just that a lot of it happened in performances that I was a part of. And the most amazing one of all was a concert of the Christmas Oratorio last month with Dame Jane Glover and friend of the show, Gwilym Bowen, as the tenor soloist and evangelist. He just absolutely knocked it out of the park. I had high expectations coming in from the last time I heard him, and I'm just obsessed with his voice. The finesse with which he can use what is a pretty sizable and cutting instrument, it is mind-boggling. His Frohe Hirten was dazzlingly fleet, and at the same time, his tone is so rich and complex, he doesn't sacrifice an ounce of tone to get the agility, and vice versa. And so every single aria just completely landed for me. He's such a sensitive and generous artist. I was really, I count myself very lucky that I was able to experience his singing up close. It's one of the joys of getting to sing with that group is when there is a top-notch soloist like that, just getting to be close to them and soak up all of the awesomeness. So, unfortunately, I couldn't find a clip of the Frohe Hirten online, but there is a clip of a different Bach aria. This is Gwilym Bowen singing Ach mein Sinn from the St. John Passion.
Ach, mein Sinn, wo willst du endlich hin? Ach, mein Sinn, wo willst du endlich hin? Ach, mein Sinn, wo willst du endlich hin? Wo willst du endlich hin? Ach, mein Sinn, wo willst du endlich hin? Wo soll ich mich erkriegen? Wo willst du endlich hin? Wohin? Wo soll ich mich erkriegen? Wo soll ich mich erkriegen? Bleib ich hier? Oder wünsch ich mir Berg und Hügel auf den Rücken? Bleib ich hier? Bleib ich hier? Oder wünsch ich mir Berg und Hügel auf den Rücken? Bei
early this year, I think February or March, I can't remember the exact day, but around that bubble, I missed a couple of episodes because I was on my honeymoon in Venice. And on the way out of Venice, I had booked tickets for Carmen during a long layover in Frankfurt, Germany. But there was a wee little airline strike that meant, oh no, we had to leave Venice a day later than expected, which was actually a problem for Frankfurt. So I ended up emailing them and a little bit of German, a little bit of English. We got it all sorted out, and they were able to make an exception to their rules, for which I am eternally grateful, and got us a ticket to see Der Traumgörge by Alexander von Zemlinsky instead of Carmen the following day. Now, as you might expect, Der Traumgörge is probably going to be a little bit more my speed than Bizet's Carmen, because I've seen Carmen a million times and Traumgörge is weird. But I will say, even stepping outside of my Weston bubble, I truly do think this is the best thing that I saw this year. You're probably unfamiliar with the libretto and the story. Don't worry too much. The English title is probably best to say Görge the Dreamer. Görge is the name of one of the characters. He's a sort of a naive kind of guy who is obsessed with reading books, specifically fairy tales, and he doesn't want to engage with the real world and society, which really wants him to marry his no-nonsense fiancée Greta, who is already herself clearly in love with a much more practical man's man. So Görge decides to leave her for a dream princess that he dreams up in a sort of a stress-induced nap right before his, I can't remember if it was a wedding or engagement party, something like that. The line between fantasy and reality becomes really blurred, and things sort of proceed from there on that sort of like, what's real, what's not, is he chasing a dream, a real person? It's hard to say. Now, Zemlinsky's operas are really, really neglected here in the U.S. and indeed even in Germany. Here in the U.S., at least, though, he has a reputation similar to the reputation of the Second Viennese School, which I think is due to the fact that he was Arnold Schoenberg's only formal composition teacher. I believe he just taught him a little bit of counterpoint, really. However, even though he was in that group and like knew everybody and, was involved with, that whole little personal dramas between that whole generation of musicians, his music is really very tonal. It's very really nicely orchestrated, very atmospheric. The harmonic language is about on the level of, say, like a Korngold or like a slightly less spicy middle period Strauss, which I think is pretty doable even for American audiences. That's my pitch to any opera companies out there. There are a number of really great hair-raising moments in the score, which we heard conducted by the conductor Takeshi Moriuchi. It was enhanced by a minimalist, not too Reggie staging of the opera, consisting of a sort of a large wooden box, some benches, and some torches here and there. There was a really cool moment where like the back lifted up and you could see all the way to the back of the back wall of the theater, and you saw these people move, the chorus moving around with torches, and it was really a hair, like really, really cool. I keep using the phrase hair raising, but it was a hair raising moment. Oper Frankfurt has had a big run of wins at the International Opera Awards over the past, 5-10 years. And I could really, really see why. The singers were all uniformly excellent. I mean, the big highlights are probably the soprano Susanna Markova as the Dream Princess / Gertraud. The tenor A.J. Gluckert, of course, was great as Görge. And I think the sort of standout side role, it's a pretty substantial role, but he really only appears in the second act, I believe, is the Canadian, I think he's Canadian, baritone Ian McNeil. Great, powerful voice, but like very still youthful sounding in a way I don't think we hear a lot in the U.S., but I think is sort of indicative of a very German sound. it was an incredible highlight of the year for me. I went searching on the internet for some recordings of this particular production. I could really only find a teaser trailer. So here's a large chunk of the teaser trailer featuring the tenor A.J. Gluckert, really just like singing his heart out. And it was really, really thrilling in person. And it's my best show of 2024.
Let's now talk about a recording that was released in 2024 that you absolutely loved. And, you know, it should be opera. I'm here making the rules, and I'm going to break the rule because my favorite recording of 2024 is one that I continue to listen to. And it is hard for me to listen to it, but I feel like compelled to listen to it and to talk about it. It's the new recording of Die Schöne Müllerin, Schubert Song Cycle, with friend of the show, Julien Prégardien, and pianist Christian Bezuidenhout on a Graf forte piano. So one of these Viennese forte pianos from around the same time as Schubert. So we're getting like this historically informed thing going on. Also, Julien Prégardien and Christian Bezuidenhout are both known for their early music specialization. Christian as a keyboard specialist, and Julien obviously as somebody who does a lot of like Monteverdi and Bach. He is bringing his sort of early music approach to Die Schöne Müllerin, and he ornaments. And that may seem gimmicky, but when you listen to him sing some of these, especially strophic songs, which really invite some kind of change of articulation or even change of the melody, which is what he does. His ornaments feel so natural and so organic. And I feel like if somebody heard this version of Die Schöne Müllerin as their first exposure to the work, they would think, oh, that's how it has to go. How could it not be sung that way with that much invention? Obviously, Julien is German, so his language is outstanding. But it's not just the enunciation of the text. It's also the colors that he chooses. And here again, he's bringing his early music chops by not always singing on the breath, by choosing, you know, some off the voice singing or just very, very close to being off the voice singing. Sometimes he makes more aggressive noises that are louder, that would not be described as bel canto. He never sings ugly, but it's not always like a, you know, on the breath, clean, well produced, you know, bel canto tone, i.e. like the way Fritz Wunderlich would sing it, or the way somebody like Matthew Polenzani would sing it. It's a very idiosyncratic interpretation of this. Well, I want you to hear just this little bit, actually, of Die Neugierige, so you can understand what I'm talking about. You'll hear a little bit of Julien's ornamentation, and you'll hear Christian's playing of the forte piano. And this is one of the dialogues that happens between the protagonist and the brook. And, you know, he's asking the brook, you know, do you think she loves me? You know, the difference between yes and no is like the difference of the world to me. And the way Christian lays down some of these chords with this bizarre forte piano that sometimes sounds like it's underwater makes it really feel like he's talking to a body of water.
das eine Wörtchen, das andere heißet nein. Die beiden Wörtchen schließen die ganze Welt mir ein. Die beiden Wörtchen schließen die ganze Welt mir ein.
So you have to listen to this whole song cycle. If you've never listened to the whole thing, it can be a chore, but I promise you this recording is that compelling that you will be sad when it's over, and it's heartbreaking. And if you don't know the story, it's essentially the story about a suicide, which we don't talk about. But Julien Pregardien models the art for this. And when you look at the cover art for this, it's heartbreaking. I've never seen this the story of this song cycle represented so honestly in the album art. That's my pick of the year. Julien Pregardien's and Christian Bezuidenhout's Die Schöne Müllerin. Let's pass it off to Matt.
So we all know that I have long been on the Meyerbeer revival train. I think he is a really underrated composer. I think the operas are much more interesting than you are taught that they are in music history, or like how people talk about Meyerbeer as just being all over the top and glitz and glamour and no substance. That is pretty misleading inherited wisdom that comes largely from Richard Wagner and his other propagandists. And while I'm not quite sure that Le Prophète is as good of an opera as I find Les Huguenots to be, it is fascinating to have a new recording of it to listen to. And I'm talking, of course, about the LSO Live recording of Le Prophète that came out this year with John Osborne as the titular Prophet, John of Leyden, Elizabeth Deschamps as Fidesz, and friend of the show Manet Galoyan as Bertha. Bertha doesn't get nearly as much importance to the plot, but some stunning singing from Manet Galoyan, notwithstanding. And this is really exciting to me because you really can't find very many recordings of even the arias from this opera other than the Marilyn Horne set. That certainly is not an issue in and of itself, since she's a legend, a force of nature, and like sings the absolute pants off of Fidesz. But it's nice to have multiple options to choose from. And that, especially that showstopper in Act 5, Au Prêtre de Bâle, like what a tour de force. And I found Elizabeth Deschamps to be more than up to the challenge. I've been a big fan of hers for a long time. I'm really happy for her to be out there on more recorded media so that there are more ways to experience her besides just hoping that companies that I get to go to can hire her. And more of the issue with the existing sets of Le Prophète is that I am really not a fan of James McCracken, and John Osborne has a much more interesting and appealing voice to me, and also sings really, really stylishly, in this type of repertoire, and it's pretty amazing to get to hear his take at John of Leyden. I'm definitely going to have to spend a little bit more time with this recording to understand all the nuances because it is long and it's complicated and it's weird, but I have had so much fun listening to it so far. And here is a clip of the aforementioned Fidesz aria with Elizabeth Deschamps singing the pants off of the finale.
Recording I loved this year for 2024. Guess what? The Shining, Kansas City Opera. Thank you so much for bringing this out to us. It's been nominated for a 2025 Grammy. Toy toy. Kelly Caduce, Roger Honeywell, and Edward Parks are absolutely fabulous on this. We spoke a little bit about this on our Halloween Spooktacular, but now the recording is available for all of us to enjoy, and I absolutely encourage you to go and check it out. The clip we're going to do here is, again, She Creeps. This is Edward Parks in the role of Jack. It's the opening of Act 2, Lyric Opera of Kansas City, their 2024 recording with George Schwartz conducting.
Got to empty her twice a day. If and you don't, you and your family will be blown sky high. Maybe I should let it go. Maybe let it blow sky high. The whole goddamn hotel. Find a way to get Wendy and Penny out of here. Then boom, and I'll go with it. Why the hell not?
For me, probably the recording that I was most excited about that I found this year, very much not a recording from 2024, was a piece by the Swiss composer Ottmar Schirk from the 1920s, late 20s, I think 26, 27, something like that. It was an orchestral song cycle entitled Lebendig begraben, which is buried alive in English. That particular recording, though, came out in the 60s, and it was recorded by Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau. So I think it would be cheating if I really just, stuck to that one, even though it's a really cool recording. I want to say also that there was a lot of really great Baroque music that was actually released this year, but that's more Oliver's territory, so I won't encroach upon it. What is my territory, though, is the recording that came out not too long ago. I think it came out in November, maybe October. It's the recording of the composer Kate Soper's new opera, and I believe it's her first full-length opera that she's written. It's called The Romance of the Rose. If you don't know Kate Soper's work, and I think I mentioned her a couple times on the show, but I don't talk about her often here because she has mostly been doing more experimental pieces that don't fit fully within that opera mold, even though she is a vocalist. But this I do think is pretty obviously an opera. She has such an encyclopedic knowledge of music and philosophy and theatrical convention. It really makes her music ride that line between highly experimental, even avant-garde, while still being very fun to listen to. Almost sometimes it can even be a little bit too ironically detached for general audiences, I think. But I think that ironic detachment really lends itself well to sort of the postmodern era of music and art that we're going through. Romance of the Rose, however, is probably her most accessible piece that I've heard of hers to date. It's based on, or perhaps more accurately, loosely inspired by, an old medieval poem. It involves a woman falling in love with a rose in a dream world, supported and obstructed by, variously, the god of love, a character named Lady Reason, and a character named Shame, who all sing through electronic vocal enhancers. There's also a narrator there who plays multiple parts. I think it's a pretty great introduction to her music and seems to be indicating a more operatic direction to Soper's career that I am super here for. Let's hear a clip of the soprano Anna Schubert, who is playing the character Lady Reason, accompanied by the Wet Ink Ensemble. This aria is, or monologue is probably more accurate to say, is all about how love is just a collision of very explainable scientific forces, and it's something to be resisted. And it's very funny, and you'll hear right away the electronic processing that her voice goes through in order to create chords in an almost recitative-like way throughout the piece, and it's a lot of fun.
Love can manifest as a God professed that you are. That's by rote conferred as each note in your 12-tone rhyme. Or womankind by design to be God's must deliver love to give her species a chance. Thus saith injunction divine. Third alternative, universal love. Love like this permits all to warm in its holy glow, running like a chromatic scale o'er all we know. And to the whole of mankind, you nobly and trust all of your love, the thrall you're under will then rust, and your heart's chains will unbind. Love that's born of a sound mind sings with a voice just. This vulgar love will dull your senses with moist lust, and is mere noise unrefined.
On to some sports, because that's why you tune in. What was your favorite sports memory of 2024? Luckily, it was an Olympic year, so we know Matt can participate in this, but I'll start off. As you know, I'm a big fan of tennis, and the span between June and July in the men's tour was super exciting because Carlos Alcaraz found his form at just the right moment and became the champion for the first time at the French Open, where he beat Alexander Zverev in the finals, which was sort of a boring match, but a really exciting match was his confrontation with world number one Jannik Sinner in the semifinals. He then went on to win Wimbledon, which was exciting, beating world number two Novak Djokovic, and that was a drubbing. I mean, Djokovic has been very, very strong in finals, and it was shocking to see Novak just fold. He got his revenge at the Olympics, and it was a heartbreaker. But that span, like I said, June and July, Carlos Alcaraz seemed incredible, and I hope that he comes back the start of the season just as exciting. I don't care his result, actually. I just love watching him play. And that actually is why he is my favorite athlete right now, because he just brings so much joy. In addition to his creativity, he brings joy to the sport, and everybody wants to watch him no matter the result. All right. So we're in an Olympic year. So Matt, take it away.
Oh, it's the 25% of years that I actually can play to about what my favorite sports memory of the year is. It's really everything Olympics, from the opening ceremonies to especially the gymnastics. Some highlights there would be the triumphant returns of Simone Biles and Sunisa Lee, the continued domination of the U.S. women's team, a really impressive showing by Jordan Childs as well on that team. Outside of Team USA, Rebecca Andrade getting a chance to get her flowers after the wildest floor final anyone has ever seen. Which brings me to the Jordan Childs bronze ripoff drama. There's not much to say at this point other than that that's some capital B, capital S BS. And it left a really bad taste in many, many mouths, including mine. Mine is like pretty low down on the list of people who should be furious about what happened there. Because we know that you are one of the greats, Jordan. We think you were robbed, and I hope I get a chance to witness your athletic prowess in the future.
My favorite sports memory of the year, besides the fact that it was an Olympic year, which is always mine and Matt's favorite, my favorite sports memory this year was the rise of the attention to women in sports. The attention to women in sports, because women in sports have always been there. But we saw way more eyeballs on things this time around. The NCAA women finally getting this visibility that is deserved on a national level in the form of Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, Simone Biles being all things that are Simone Biles, Sha'Carri Richardson finally getting to go to the Olympics, Coco Gauff, the most watched WNBA season in history. We love progressive queens. We love that people are finally giving women's sports the eyeballs and the attention and the dollars and the endorsements that it deserves. May this continue into 2025.
In terms of sports, this isn't necessarily my favorite moment of the year, but the most earth-shattering news of any kind in Alabama right at the beginning of 2024 was the announcement of the retiring of Nick Saban from coaching the Crimson Tide. That was legitimately all I saw my Bama folks talking about on Facebook for a solid month and a half. And it really has gone on to sort of solidify Saban's now semi-permanent, possibly permanent sort of reputation as the true successor to the legendary Bear Bryant. And, you know, what more can I say than roll tide?
Okay. Now that we talked about athlete or sports memory of the year, let's talk about our artist of the year. And it'll be no surprise to you all that baritone Hugh Montague Rendell continues to reign in my heart. He released his solo debut album on Warner, Contemplation, which I love, which has a little bit of everything. It's got some musical theater. It's got orchestrated art song and melody. It's got some of his signature operatic roles. And it has a souvenir of a role that he debuted this year at Vienna State Opera, which is that of Billy Budd. Once again, I saw him in 2023 as Peleos at Santa Fe, and it continues to haunt me, his performance, and I cannot wait to watch more Hugh Montague Rendell. Ashley.
My artist of the year this year, honorable mention goes to Catherine Needleman. She is doing the Lord's work. Thank you for all that you do in exposing BFMs. But in terms of an actual artist of the year, I'm going to go with Lisette Oropeza. She is, like the film says, everything everywhere all at once. She seems to be singing all of the best roles. She seems to be at the top of her voice. She seems to be really, really the it gal of the moment, and her artistry backs it up, and she is a lovely human to boot. And I love great art, but I love it even more when it comes from great people. So for me, this year, it was the year of Lisette Oropeza. Thanks a lot. We'll see you again in 25.
So while making it to live opera didn't really happen quite so much for me this year, I did get a chance to see the Met in HD of La Forza del Destino, and it was amazing. It's just that the best performance I saw in a year can't be a video recording. Like, I just have some standards for myself. And what that meant is that I got to continue the greatness that is Lisa Davidson, who I'm pretty sure was my artist of the year for 2023 after I saw her in Yenufa. But you know what? When you got it, you got it. And I am still thinking 10 months later about her renditions of Pace Pace Mio Dio and Son Giunta, the Madre, and really all of Leonora's music, because it's just a privilege to get to hear a new production and of La Forza del Destino to begin with. It's been decades since one really happened. And while I was only able to catch the HD, I think I just have to give her another year for how dominant of a singer she remains, both in my hunger for additional Lisa Davidson concert, because I will just leap at the chance to hear her sing any repertoire, whether from Janacek to Verdi to Strauss to Wagner to Beethoven, and like so far all of it has sounded pretty impeccable. She's only ever exceeded my expectations, and just the continued promise for her as a smart singer who's going to have, knock on wood, the greatest career that she could ever possibly deserve. So here's looking forward to more wonderful music making in 2025.
Anthony Roth Costanzo is a great countertenor, but I think in 2024, he has had a return to the limelight, not just as a singer, but to the general directorship of Opera Philadelphia, which was quite massive in 2024. In terms of his performing highlights, his one-man Marriage of Figaro was pretty astounding from what I've been told, and obviously incredibly difficult. But then he goes and pulls this pay-what-you-can model with Opera Philadelphia that, if it works out, has the potential to completely reshape the way opera companies think about outreach to new audiences. And this is from a company that's already known for doing that sort of thing anyway. I have an obligatory plug for our interview with him this year. I believe it's the second time we had him on. I think the episode was called Queerbait Casting or something like that. Of course, we'll see how successful that experiment will have been in the coming year or two, and we'll from there figure out how it might be refined and adapted for other companies. But it was really refreshing to see such bold moves from an artist who is walking the walk as well as singing the sing.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. That's how we end the show, even if I can't think of a good call or bad call. So once again, I'm calling on you, our listeners, to let me know, what was your good call for 2024? What was your bad call for 2024? We love to hear from you. And hey, make sure in the new year you make one of your resolutions convincing all of your friends and perhaps some enemies to listen to the podcast. We would really truly appreciate it. That is it for this year's edition of America's talk radio show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Get your voice heard and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. That is also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. And your audio editor is me. The executive producer of the OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-hosts Matt Cummings and Ashley Hardgrave, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as the ball drops in Times Square. We're back with an all-new show next year. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more, I want to say, #Callous101. Join us.